Hi, everybody. I am now live. So excited to see all of you here. Um, I see people joining. That is awesome. I'm going to invite our wonderful guest, Vlad from Romanian Thrills. So just give me a second to do that. But I just want to say already, seeing some of you here, I'm so happy that you managed to access our Instalive. I know that for a lot of you, this is the first time that you're doing it. I just want to say I'm so proud of you for being so tech savvy. You're awesome. So, hi. So great to see you again, everyone. Okay, I am, ooh, no sound. No sound. Could you let me know in the comments if you can hear me? Meanwhile, I'm going to invite Vlad. Give me a request. So I'm waiting for Vlad to join. Please let me know in the comments if you can hear me. Hi, Vlad. So great to see you.
Hello, everyone. I can personally
Hello.
hear you,
Oh,
so
great.
not sure if you can hear me as well.
Awesome. Yes, I can hear you perfectly. And look, we already have comments in here saying that some of our viewers have been to Romania and they love your country.
Wow, excellent. Amazing. It's very nice to
Yes.
have everyone.
Yes, it is so wonderful to see you, Vlad. So everybody, Vlad and I met kind of like this in the spring of 2020 when tourism was in this big state of chaos, and we were um, we were in a community of tour operators, tour guides who were trying to figure out, what to do, how to how to
Adapt.
survive, yes, and how to adapt. And we talked about doing virtual tours, and I was just so happy to revisit Vlad's company's page recently and see that they are doing well. They are doing virtual tours, so I was really excited to join him here today. So Vlad, could you tell us a little bit about Romanian Thrills, your company? I know it's not just you, right? There's two of you, right? And
Yeah,
what do you guys
that's
do? Yeah.
yeah. So I started together with my partner in life and in
Mm-hmm.
business, Georgiana. We actually started in 2018 after we traveled the world a little bit and working in hospitality. We always met people from all over the world asking us about Romania, how it is. They'd love to travel there. It's an intriguing country. It's like a hidden gem of Europe. Not a lot of people have it on their wish list, but more and more add it nowadays. So, because we had this experience in hospitality, we decided to start a boutique travel company here, specializing only in Romania, very similar to what you guys are doing at Eagle Travel Tours for Russia. We work a lot with American customers, and we wanted to showcase the hidden gems of Romania and the parts, not only the popular areas of Romania, but going beyond that. So we wanted to focus on cultural travel, on a lot of experiences, or engaging activities that people can do in our home country. So we started this in 2018. And slowly but surely, we grew in popularity, and we released some very popular videos online with vloggers. There's even a series of Flying the Nest in Romania, some of Australia's popular vloggers that came in here. We got some awards for our work because we're doing things a little bit different. And this is why I'm really happy to have this live with you, because I know in St. Petersburg and in Moscow you're doing the same thing, and it's amazing. So we started quite recently. We made an impact. We made an impact in our small communities, like artisan communities, and in our nature walks as well, because we want this to be a win-win situation for our travelers, for the people for the locals that work in Romania in tourism. And then, after a very great year in 2019, 2020 came in, and as you mentioned, we had to adapt,
Mm-hmm.
right? We had to pivot,
Yeah.
we had to rethink our strategy and how we can bring Romania to people from their comfort and safety of their homes.
Mm-hmm.
It took us a while because this summer we didn't know exactly what's going to happen. We postponed a lot of tours and decided, hey, these people are still longing to travel. They still want to experience Romania, Russia, and other destinations that they have on their mind. So we decided to migrate towards virtual tours. We gave it a try. A lot of people were interested and appreciated that even though without travel being possible, they can hear and more about these countries. And what I noticed, and I wanted to ask you too about this, is even people who booked tours with us and couldn't come, so they postponed it for next year and so on. They joined these events and tours because it was like an introduction or like a preview for the future tours that they'll do. So it was like a very nice crash course or background information of what they will experience. I wanted to ask you the same, if you experienced this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's amazing what I found through providing virtual tours is that a lot of people who join them, they just want to get a taste of the country. They just want to, they do still plan to visit. It's not that they are replacing their actual trip with a virtual one, but they are just trying to learn a bit more before they go. And it really all depends on like what exactly they are interested in. And some people, for example, with us, you know, Russia just has so many amazing museums. So yeah, we do have lots of amazing artisan things too, but we have lots of wonderful museums where when I go into museums, I like to know beforehand, like what are some of the amazing pieces there. And so people join our virtual tours to learn beforehand, you know, and get excited about some of the paintings, for example, that they're going to see at the Hermitage. At the same time, some people want to know more about Russian life, and they join, you know, our tours that are more connected to that, or watch our lives or videos on YouTube to learn about that. And I definitely feel like virtual tours have helped us stay in touch with people and just provide them this opportunity to get to know the country a little bit more before they go.
Yeah, I always compare it to that feeling you have when you read a book about the country you'll be visiting next, or you watch a movie, or anything that can connect you a little bit more to the culture or the background of that country. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad we get the opportunity to do this via this live as well, and hope to get people excited. And I think the most important thing, because we are also travel aficionados and we love to travel, of course, as tour guides, is just for people to keep that spark alive, the travel spark, be it from their own homes or be it by arranging plans for the future. It's probably one of the most rewarding experiences, and well, in my own opinion, one of the best forms of education if done properly.
Totally. And I agree with you. I feel like, you know, our stories are just so similar. I also started Eagle with my husband. We started it together. So it's for both of us. It's like family business, which is so cool. And we really care about showing people something off the beaten path, right? Not just something that is available to everybody. And what I like that too, that you guys do the same. If you are watching this because you came from me, do go into Romanian Thrills Instagram and you will just see pictures of other people that they work with. Yeah, all these artisan bakers and craftsmen, and that I think is just so awesome. If you went there by yourself, you wouldn't be able to experience all of that. You know, you wouldn't be able to as easily go and connect with locals, or see secret rooms in museums, hear the perspective of the locals. And I think that's what the travel of the future is becoming now, that some information is so easily available online. It's all about access, and you guys provide that access.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is our duty as tour guides, and you need to take people to experiences and places that they can't go themselves, and tell those stories that you can't find on the internet. You can't find them online, or it's just a tradition passed from generation to generation that you really need to feel and experience and get to know more about. So yeah,
Totally.
definitely agreed.
Awesome. So when Vlad and I were talking about, Russia and Romania and what are some similarities between our countries, the funny thing, he was like, well, can we just not talk about communism? And I was like, yeah, sure. I get it. This is kind of the obvious thing. And this is another thing, like what I was thinking, what is something that is more interesting to hear from the storytelling perspective. And we came up with the idea of Dracula and in general, just the infamous villains in our country's histories. Because when you say, for me personally, and I know that it's the same for a lot of other people, when I think of Romania, I certainly, that Dracula and now Romania, I don't know how well you guys know that all these new Netflix Christmas movies, I know that they also are shot in Romania. These are the two things that I know about Romania. But Dracula has been there, for this whole time. And but I know so little about him. I know that he was a real person, and there's just so much more to the story. I was just so excited to have you tell us more about him.
Sure, I'll be happy to do it, and before that, I would actually like to go through a little bit of description of Romania, because if we jump straight into the subject, of course, I know it's on everybody's mind, and to be honest, I have a disclosure. I think it's a little bit of a clickbait, the Dracula myth. We personally want to go beyond the Dracula myth. So first of all, I will actually start with Transylvania, which everybody associates with Dracula and his castles and the mountains over there. But I wanted to talk about an infamous person in Transylvania, disputed with Romanian and Hungarian descent. He is regarded as a hero, but of course it comes from medieval times, and we need to think in medieval times nothing was white or black. Everything was, in a gray area. Even if you were trying to do good, you had to make a lot of compromise. So I wanted to ask people, and they can write in the comments if they'd like, who they think I want to talk about the same period with Dracula, where the Dracula myth started, from Transylvania. If anybody has any clue, they can drop his name over there. I can give you some more clues. This guy is the person who started building and turning what we call Corvin Castle today into a big castle, a fortress. A lot of people maybe know Bran Castle, which is more famous because of Dracula. Well, in Transylvania, we have something, in my humble opinion, a lot more beautiful in terms of architecture and medieval stories and everything historical and cultural related or military related is Corvin Castle. People who are interested in spooky stories, dungeons, and all other things, they can find everything in Corvin's Castle. So there was this guy called John Hunyadi that started the whole construction in Corvin's Castle. He is an infamous person from Transylvania because, as we will find out later, Dracula was not exactly the ruler of Transylvania. We will see more about him. This is the first myth that we debunked today, okay? But in Transylvania, actually, there was a young boy, actually, John Hunyadi. Before he came to rule this province, he was the bastard child of King Sigismund of Luxembourg. He was the Holy Roman Emperor, also King of Hungary during those times. Of course, during those times, you couldn't really put your bastard child in line for the throne. So what he did, he gave him a ring so that when he grows up, he can show it to the court, to the royal court, the ring as a proof that it's his bastard son, so he can take a very good position in the military. The thing is, the boy lost the ring at one point because one raven took it from his hand while going to the royal court to prove his heritage. And he was a very experienced military man by this time, young man. He pulled out the bow and he killed the raven, thus recovering the ring and showing it to the royal court. As such, he became initially, of course, a soldier in the army of the king. And then later, he distinguished himself in many battles and got the title of general and governor of the province of Transylvania during those times. We need to remember in Romania, even though now it's one country, back in the days, it was split in 3 different provinces. It was Transylvania, which most of the people know. It was Wallachia to the south, where Bucharest is nowadays. And it was Moldova, which nowadays is split between the Republic of Moldova, maybe you've heard of that, and also the Moldova that was kept in Romania. This part of Moldova was split after World War II. So, going further with our infamous person, John Hunyadi, this is the reason why the Corvin Castle is named as such, because Corvinus in Latin means raven, and even their coat of arms, if you Google it, you will see it's a raven with a ring in its head, in its beak, showing the heritage of John Hunyadi. So when he built this castle, there were a lot of things going on. A lot of enemies passing through. It was designed as a fortress, and definitely there were a lot of spies, a lot of people that he needed to put to capture, be it to trade them later on from a negotiation point of view in wars, be it just as punishment. Remember, during those times, all kinds of exaggerated behaviors that we might feel they are normal nowadays, right? Like even smoking a cigarette, because there was the time when people were importing goods from the Americas. They just discovered the Americas. Remember, we're in 15th century now. And if you would smoke something similar to a cigar and you were puffing smoke out of your mouth, they would think you're a witch or a sorcerer or a wizard or something like that. They would put you in the dungeon, and it was not pleasant. So Corvin Castle actually has very intricate networks, even nowadays, of dungeons. So one of the most famous one is called La Oubliette, from the French term, which means to be forgotten. And you would be kept in there with no sunlight, with no food, with no anything for months, until basically your body or the rats or anything else will just take care of you. Obviously, a lot of myths started around these dungeons in Corvin Castle, and even today, it's regarded as one of the most haunted castles. The tour guides in Corvin Castle, if you go there and take a tour, they kind of avoid the areas of the dungeons, because they say before or after they take people in these areas, they hear all kinds of voices, or, there's multiple explanations. It can be echo and so on. But trust me, when you're there and it's dark and it's damp and there's no one around you, you can get all kinds of ideas and feelings. So there's no wonder a lot of companies, media companies, came to shoot interviews. Ghost hunters or busters came in to check the radiation levels and so on. There's a lot of horror movies that were shot over there. Unfortunately, nothing great in terms of, Hitchcock or anything crazy, but blockbuster movies. I think the most recent one was The Nun, just shot a few years ago in Corvin Castle. So a lot of things happening even today. It's one of the oldest castles, is one of the most beautiful castles in Romania nowadays, from my point of view, because it suffered many changes in terms of architecture and development and so on. And I see some people are asking us about pictures. Unfortunately, with the Instagram Live, it's a little bit tricky. I can maybe show you something on the computer, but it's the same thing as you would Google it, maybe. What I can do, though, is put in the comments section some of the names that we'll talk right now. So I'll put the names, and then you can just look for more information if you're interested, because there are really some interesting stories about them. But these ones that I'm telling you are a little bit more off the beaten path. Okay.
That is cool.
One more thing that I wanted to tell people about John Hunyadi, because even in Romania, he's a controversial figure. Hungarians believe, think of him as their hero. We think of him as our hero. To be honest, during those times, everybody had a common goal to fight against the Ottomans, because the Ottoman Empire, which had a different faith, it was not Christian, it was Islamic. They actually gained a lot of power and influence in Europe, and most of the major powers allied themselves to fight against the Turks. It was the case with Hungary, with the provinces of Romania, and so on. One thing that we still have today from John Hunyadi is the ringing of the bells at noon. In most of the Christian faiths, or most of the Christian churches, they ring the bells at noon every day. And this tradition, not sure if anyone knows about it, dates back to the 15th century, when John Hunyadi established a defensive position in Belgrade against the Ottoman Empire. By then, the Pope, because the Pope had a lot of power and a lot of money, but most of the times the money, when he was traveling from Rome all the way to Eastern Europe, was losing some of its value on the way. Some commission was supposed to be given in every province or country that it was traveling to. So, the Pope was keeping some for himself, another king, and so on. So in the end, in Eastern provinces, not a lot of money or soldiers or guns and weapons were available for this reason. So the Pope, what he did, instead of sending more money, he said, okay, let's gather everyone and pray for the Christian armies in Belgrade to win over the Ottoman Empire, because it was a very strategic position, and if it was conquered, probably the Ottoman armies could have gone all the way up to Rome or even further. For this reason, the churches started ringing the bells to boost the morale of the troops, of the citizens, of everyone involved in the war effort. And it worked. John Hunyadi actually won that battle. Unfortunately, he died later on from wounds and from plague. It was common in the 15th century. But it was a very important strategic victory, and for more than 500 years, this happened in 1456. We still have the same tradition. I'm in Orthodox churches, I know some of them do it. Catholic churches, some of them do it. Not sure about the Protestant ones, because later on, in 16th century, Protestant traditions changed. But it's something that we still have today from these famous or infamous people, because John Hunyadi was known also for him being a very ruthless person, and we'll see. Not sure if it was just him or all the medieval rulers. These were the times, and this is how a ruler had to act if he wanted to stay or to keep the power.
Wow, this is incredible. Yeah, it rings so many bells. Like when you speak about the bells ringing at noon, and a haunted, some sort of haunted dungeon, with the power-hungry or suspicious rulers. All that reminds me of this amazing place in St. Petersburg that we visit. It's a must, whether you are visiting online or offline. There's this amazing fortress. It's called Peter and Paul's Fortress, and so it was originally built for protecting the city. We had a long war, and eventually, though, our royal family existed for centuries, and every once in a while, there were people that maybe did not want the monarchy to be there. They wanted, to create some sort of palace coup, or there were all sorts of imposters. And so eventually, as there were so many people that were going against the government, a big part of the fortress became a political jail. And it was so easy and convenient because the walls of the fortress are pretty thick. And so they just started kind of like, they created little prison cells inside the fortress walls. And then, as you know, they realized, yeah, we're gonna have political prisoners all the time. And so they built a separate prison. And there are some crazy, spooky stories about just like things that were happening in this prison. There was a famous imposter that said she was like an illegitimate daughter of Peter the Great. And she was just like, I think she was kind of like an opportunist in Europe. She was just saying it so that she could be introduced to new people, kind of like be part of the classy society. But then Catherine the Great heard it, and she was like, well, she is a threat to me. She sent one of her lovers to Europe and had him find that lady. He charmed her, and she thought she was coming to Russia with him to marry him. But basically, the minute she stepped off the ship in Russia, she got arrested and placed in that prison. And, St. Petersburg has a lot of water, and it used to flood a lot. And she died in the prison during one of the floods. And so, like, we believe that you can see her ghost there in the prison of Peter and Paul's Fortress, and some other ghosts. And that is also the place where every day at noon we have a cannon shot. And St. Petersburg is this amazing place that tried to step away from religion and make our culture a bit more secular, a bit more centered around politics. And so when in other cities they would ring the church bells at noon, in St. Petersburg they would just shoot a cannon. Yeah. And that just symbolized that it's lunchtime. There were lots of people working on the construction of the city, and that's another like spooky story. They say St. Petersburg is built on people's bones because it was like tough working conditions. And so, but 12 just meant lunchtime. And so we still do it. So for over 300 years, we've been shooting the cannons there.
I totally believe there's a lot more spooky stories and real ones than all the myths that, they're surrounded about Ivan the Terrible or Rasputin or Dracula or all these. There's like some real people out there that lived and done some terrible things that are not so popular because maybe a writer didn't publish a novel about them, or they're not as exaggerated as people would like to, so on and so forth. It reminds me of this whale that actually exists in Corvin Castle that John Hunyadi, after he captured two Turkish soldiers in the war, he asked them to dig in order to find water, because back in the days, a fortress was only as weak as its water source. If you had water, you could defend for days, weeks, months, sometimes. Whereas if you didn't, if they would cut your water supply, you were basically dying out of thirst, so you would surrender. So there was no fountain in Corvin Castle. He got these Turkish prisoners and promised them freedom if they would dig this fountain until they found water. And it's built on a very rocky, very hard, rocky area of Transylvania. So it was a very complicated process. They dug more than 25 years for their freedom. And at the end, stories have them that he was a man of character. He wanted to release them, but he died before they finished digging the well. And his wife, who was at least as ruthless as him, didn't allow them to leave and actually got him killed, put them in the prison, and that was the end of them. So I can imagine all kinds of haunted stories around and all kinds of spooky feelings next to these wells and the dungeons and everything else. Fortunately, the castle is not open at night unless you get a really private tour to open the castle for you, which is possible but very complicated. It's usually for people who want to video over there for special occasions. But yeah, it's definitely, from my perspective, a nice addition for everyone who's watching in terms of, Bran Castle or the more famous things. And I see someone said, I think the prisoners carved something on the wall, and it's true. And nowadays, disclosure, if you've been there, someone might have told you it's written in Arabic next to the wall. It's written, you have water now, but you have no soul or no character, because they were killed. They were put to prison after they finished digging the well. Disclosure, it's a very nicely written thing, and it's a fake. Someone did it in the past tens of years when communists refurbished the castle for touristic purposes. But there was an inscription that they couldn't really translate back from the days from 500 years ago. They couldn't really translate it because it was damaged due to wear and tear and elements. Somebody is asking us if Russians or Romanians generally believe in ghosts and superstitions, and I would like to leave you to answer that question, because in Romania, everybody, especially outside of the cities, fully believes in superstitions very, very thoroughly.
Oh yeah, Russians are really superstitious. It starts with like little everyday things, like for example, now that I live in the US, I definitely don't feel there are as many superstitions here as like in Russia. Like Russians, for example, don't whistle indoors, and they believe that if you whistle, is that the same in Romania?
It's
Do you guys
a Slavic
have that?
thing.
It's a Slavic thing. You guys also don't whistle indoors.
Yeah, whistling indoors. Many things. An international one, of course, is knock on wood, right? That's international.
Of course.
But a lot of them, 3 steps back, and if you, black cat or anything like that, always need to step with your right foot if you leave your house. If you go to an important meeting or anything like that, even if you forget something at home, it's bad omen if you go back into the house. So I told my mom at one point, like, wait, I forgot my presentation. I'm going to a presentation. No, just improvise. You don't go back.
Yeah, you can't
I
go
need
back.
my presentation.
It's the same, yeah. If you forget something at home, if you are heading somewhere and you forget something at home, you shouldn't go back, or it's bad luck. But do Romanians do something? Because in Russia, we have something that can help you neutralize that bad luck. Is there something you have in Romania?
Yeah, fortunately, it's a little bit of spitting.
Oh, spitting. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Ours is a little bit more hygienic.
Okay.
We have to look in the mirror.
It's like, okay, you have to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
That also only works in around our Halloween, which is at end of November, on St. Andrew's night, or the Night of the Wolves, it's called here in Romania, where people, keep garlic in front of their doors and windows to keep the bad spirits away. It's literally our version of Halloween here in Romania. And people do believe in that. They have a lot of superstitions about that. There's many superstitions with the beginning of the year, because in Romania, the pagan traditions that were here before it was Christianized, before the medieval times, the pagan beliefs got mixed with the Christian ones.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of different things going on.
Yeah.
So
Paula is mentioning lots of great superstitions there in the chat.
Yeah. We have those as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely superstitious. And I can continue if you'd like with another infamous character from Romania that also created many superstitions or more beliefs in the Romanian culture. And now we move a little bit to the other province of Romania, to Moldova, which is actually closer to the Russian influence. It was for the past hundreds of years closer to the Russian influence. We always say in Romania, in Transylvania, You drink palinka, which is a very strong spirit with Hungarian origins. In Wallachia, you drink wine, or you drink suika, which is a more mellow spirit. And in Moldova, people just drink vodka because they're closer to the Russian and Polish origins. Poland was influencing Moldova before. And there's this guy called Stephen the Great that used to be the longest ruler of the province of Moldova in Romania. He took the power from corrupt rulers because he thought he can turn the province against the Ottoman Empire. At that point, Moldova was kind of swinging allegiances between the Christians and between the Ottomans, even though all Romanian provinces were Christian. But it was easier to pay the tribute to the mighty Ottoman Empire than to fight with a very, very small army against their vast numbers. So Stephen the Great decided enough is enough. They had to send their kids, the young boys, they were sent to the Ottoman Empire as training, which were later on incorporated into the Ottoman Janissary army. So it was quite tough, I can imagine, for every parent to leave, even for those days, which were much tougher than nowadays, to leave your kids to, in the hands of the Ottomans. So they said, okay, it's better to fight and die than to continue doing this. He was actually a very short person, a short stature for a ruler. But again, we have many examples in history of short rulers that achieved many things.
Yeah.
One of them, as you probably know, is Napoleon. Unfortunately for him, he decided to invade Russia, so that never works out. People realize that never works out. But Stephen the Great was short, but very feisty. He was quick to get angry. He didn't trust no one. He always double checked his drink when someone was getting his drink. He had a special designated person, of course, to carry the drink only for the ruler. Actually, one of the reasons why even nowadays we ching ching, maybe a lot of people know this already, but is because during those times you couldn't trust the next person. So by clinking your cups, the drinks would mix one with the other, and if there was poison in one of them, you would both be done. So if someone would poison you, it would, okay, maybe it's good not to drink from your cup, and then who knows what would happen. So he was very ruthless as well. And he had one of the longest rules because he managed to organize everyone in his province, of course, by force. A lot of people think that this was done voluntarily. Okay, let's find for the greater good and so on. But remember, there was an agricultural society. There were a lot of shepherds and a lot of people that were not necessarily impacted by the war in the mountains and so on. So he would go there and said, okay, there's no other choice. We need to go and fight against the Ottomans. They said, it is not only a saying, but his sword, despite his short stature, was more than half his size. His sword,
Wow.
Unfortunately, cannot be found in Romania anymore because after his death, the Ottomans took administration of Moldova. Even though it was independent, it was paying tribute to the Ottomans, and they confiscated his sword because he was one of the rulers that withstanded them, and they had great admiration for them. So they decided to keep the sword. Even nowadays, it's in Topkapı Palace in Istanbul, if anyone wants to see that and compare it to the size of Stephen the Great. But one thing that we have from Stephen the Great, even nowadays, is a lot of churches. Maybe a lot of people know in Moldova there are many more churches than the rest of Romania. And some of the UNESCO World Heritage churches are in Moldova, in the area called Bucovina. Most of them were built during his time in the 15th century as well, because they said after every successful battle, he was building a church to praise to praise the Lord, to praise God for helping him battle the Ottomans, who were regarded as the infidels. They believed in Allah, not in Christianity. So more realistic story that historians tend to agree to is that he wasn't doing this only to thank God. Of course, he was doing it to thank the clergy, the priests, and so on, who had a very big influence during those times. There were not many schools, and people were preaching in the churches, and a lot of people would follow the advice of the priests. So he needed that, but also. Historians tend to agree that he built a church for every mistress he had, so that God can forgive him. That back in the days, it was not very customary to have many mistresses, at least not officially. And he built more than 40 churches in total. So I think he had a very active life, personal and work-related, of course. They say more than 50% of today's population in Moldova descends from Stefan the Great.
Wow.
So we have to thank him for that. Georgiana, my partner, actually was born very, very close from the village where Stefan the Great was born, and yeah, a lot of people are kind of proud, and they trace themselves back to Stefan the Great.
Wow.
So there's some interesting stories about the Moldova area of Romania. Unfortunately, after he died, there wasn't someone as ruthless and as strong as him to oppose the Ottoman Empire. And this is because also every province became individualistic. It was every man for himself, instead of forming alliances and fighting this great war machine that was the Ottoman Empire. Do you have anyone closely related or similar in your culture?
Well, I don't know why, because right now lots of Russian guys are short. But in history, we certainly don't. All of our rulers were always notoriously tall. But in general, the story just reminds me of Ivan the Terrible, because I think that it can come, these neuroses that people have, and suspicions and fears can come from all sorts of places. And it reminds me of Ivan the Terrible, because when Ivan the Terrible was little, he saw his own father being killed, and that could create this whole feeling of constant paranoia. And he started well. He inherited the throne. He was doing just fine, and started ruling the country just fine. Offered some good laws and stuff, but then something clicked, and he became really suspicious, and he had almost like a mini guard of people who were really loyal to him, and went all over the country and really viciously persecuted people who didn't follow exactly, all of the laws that were introduced by Ivan the Terrible. And that just reminds me so much. And then we have in our history just so many characters like that. Peter the Great did not end up as ruthless as Ivan the Terrible. Not a lot of people were persecuted, but definitely there were some. And Peter the Great also saw his father being killed when he was little. So there is a connection there. And of course, the biggest villain of Russian history that we all know, Joseph Stalin, that, also reminds me of that, of course, too. And just persecution of people who are a little different than you, constantly being afraid that someone is going to go against you, checking whether somebody is trying to poison you or someone is talking behind your back. That is, I don't think it's just a Slavic thing, but certainly our histories have that in common, have plenty of those characters, that's for sure.
Definitely. I always tell people, if they watched Game of Thrones, right, which most of us did, it's fiction, but it's so much more based on what would happen, apart the dragons. We'll talk about dragons in a few minutes. Have patience. Ooh. We'll talk about dragons as well. But it's so much more based on the reality of medieval times than people think. there were constant plot twists and this and that, and you know, people with, of course, issues with their parents being killed or abusing them and so on. It was common sense. So actually, I want to connect what you just said. These rulers that saw their family killed, that saw usually a father figure killed or their brother killed, they always develop all kinds of disorders. And maybe you didn't know or you did know, but Dracula was no different. It happens to all people who experience these kinds of trauma. We just don't realize. A lot of people associate Dracula, right, with Transylvania, as we've said. It's not entirely true. A lot of the people associate him with the novel of Bram Stoker, but the real guy behind the story, the legend, is Vlad the Impaler. And yes, I do share the same name with him. If Georgiana traces her roots back to Stefan the Great, I trace my roots back to Vlad the Impaler. Not sure if I want to market that, but at least we share the same name. It's a very Slavic name. Yeah. Vlad in Romania is more popular. Vlad, the short version. I'm not sure if you're just lazy or anything. We have some Latin blood in here. Whereas in Russia, correct me if I'm wrong, more popular version is Vladimir. Yeah. Vladislav, maybe. Yeah. Everybody associates with Putin and Lenin and so on. Exactly. So in here, it's just Vlad the Impaler. We'll talk about how he got the nickname, because the nickname actually went after the real name, Dracula. Dracula is not just a fictionist name. Dracula existed. Dracula was his last name, Vlad Dracula in Romania. He actually lived in the same century with the other two guys in the 15th century. He belonged to a royal bloodline in Wallachia. So he was supposed to become the ruler of Wallachia. He was, though, born in the village of Sighișoara, in the town nowadays of Sighișoara, one of the last inhabited medieval towns in Europe. Sighișoara nowadays, you can still visit what historians agree to have been his father's house. So he was born over there, but his royal court, his province that he was supposed to inherit and to take care of was Wallachia, the one south of Transylvania and the one where Bucharest is. Funny thing, when he did take the rule of Wallachia, he actually was the first person ever to mention Bucharest in a written text, in a written letter, when he was asking for help from the Christian powers to fight against the Ottomans. So he's also considered the father of Bucharest, and you'll see his name all over Bucharest for this reason. In the old town of Bucharest, he still has a royal court, which is under renovation right now. Hopefully after COVID, it will be open. The town Dracula was born to is Sighișoara. It's very complicated, I know. Romanian is kind of a complicated language, especially when we talk about, when we pronounce the words. So he was born over there. His father was still ruling Wallachia, and because the Ottomans were knocking at his doors and he was not receiving any help from the Christian powers, he agreed to let his sons go, his two sons, Vlad and Radu, the younger one, to the Ottoman court as protection from the Ottoman attacks and as a sign of confidence. So Vlad was was bigger, in terms of age, he was older than his brother, so he didn't really like being separated from his father. He was trained in all kinds of military techniques, torture techniques. He kind of liked this stuff, whereas his brother Radu, he was nicknamed Radu the Handsome. So you can imagine he wasn't the great warrior that people imagined. He was more refined. He was spending a lot more time with the Sultan, and at one point in the Sultan's harem. So you can imagine for Vlad, this was very weird, especially in medieval times. They said Radu the Handsome was nicknamed actually by the Sultan himself. So you can imagine what love story was happening in front of Vlad while being also alone far away from his family. During these times, Vlad, his father and his older brother in Wallachia got killed by the boyars because they wanted to take the power. A type of Game of Thrones plot twist.
Yeah.
So he tells the Ottomans he wants to go back and take over the throne of his father, and he can continue, playing well with the Ottomans. He did come back. He did take the power. He actually organized a big feast for all the boyars. By the way, the boyars were the nobility of the Romanian provinces and also other eastern provinces, the nobility of that area. He organized a feast. Okay, I'm the new ruler. I want to make everyone happy. I will organize a feast with food and drinks, and everyone will be having a good time. When he saw the boyars were selling so short, and pledged their allegiance for him, just for this feast, he closed the doors of the barn and set it on fire. This way, he said, he would just purge everyone that would not be loyal to him or he could not trust, because he realized his family was killed by the boyars at the Ottomans' sign, at the Ottomans' intent. And he developed a hatred towards the Ottomans and decided to stop paying tribute to them, and decided to use his most famous torture techniques in the war against them, because he had a very small army. The Ottomans were very big. When they heard he stopped paying tribute, they sent a large army to fight him. This is when he took his nickname, the Impaler. But to continue with the Dracula name, his last name, he got this from his father, because the bloodline of his father, the family tree, was called Dracula. And this meant devil in Romanian. Why would people call his family tree the devils in Romania? Sigismund of Luxembourg, the guy that we discussed before, the Holy Roman Emperor, he, instead of, again, it's about money. Instead of paying money to hire mercenaries or soldiers or weapons in the war effort against the Ottomans, he would award the Dragon Order, the Order of the Dragon, to every ruler of any province, Christian province, that would fight against the Ottomans. It was more of a high social status, so it can open doors in courts and so on, more than practical help in terms of fighting the enemy. But this was a very appreciated order, the Order of the Dragon. Imagine people didn't have HBO, didn't have Netflix or anything like that. They didn't watch Game of Thrones. They didn't know how a dragon looked like. This coat of arms of the Order of the Dragon actually had like a basilisk, like what we would associate a dragon with nowadays. So when people in Wallachia have seen that, they associated it with the devil. And the devil in Romania means Dracu. From there, Dracula name came. His father was called Vlad Dracul. And during those times when you had a son, you would add an A to the last name. So Vlad Dracul was his father. Vlad Dracula is the son of Dracul, the son of the devil in Romanian. So imagine he was just a baby and he was already frightening. Imagine you had a baby and he's called Vlad, the son of the devil.
Wow.
Now, he was known for his ruthlessness, and he would not tolerate any law abidement and anything like that. But he needed to defend himself against the Sultan, who would invade Wallachia because they didn't pay the tribute. So this is when he got his nickname, the Impaler. He did not invent the impalement technique. This is a very old technique, is thousands of years old, from Assyrian empires, but the Turks got it also from Asia. He was in Turkey, he got some influence from them, and he decided to pay them back with the same torture techniques.
Yeah. Just in case people don't know what it is, can you briefly explain the Impaler technique?
I do have a pen with me. I won't make it more brutal than this, okay? So imagine you would have a pole, a wooden pole, a wooden beam, very sharp and pointy to the end. And it would be around 5-6 meters tall. So that would be 18 feet long, quite thick. And then 6 people, sometimes up to 6 people, were supposed to take it up. But before you would take it up, you would grease it. And most of the times you would grease the tip with pork fat, not only because it slides easier into one's body, but also because for the Ottomans, it was unholy if pork was touching them, and it would prevent them to enter their heaven. So they would put a person, it would insert it through the bottom. Of course, sometimes it would go up through the vital organs, but a proper impaling technique was considered one that would avoid all the vital organs so that the torture could last longer.
Oh my God.
A good technique was inspected by Dracula himself, and it had a countdown for 72 hours. So the person would have to stay on the beam for 72 hours for 3 days with wounds open in the heat of the sun or in the cold of the winter, with birds feeding on them and so on and so forth. It was really, really brutal. And now imagine the expedition force that the Ottomans sent. Initially, it was in the summer, like 1,000 people or so. Vlad Impaler ambushed them in a forest, captured them, and put every single soldier on a beam, on a stick, on the way that the big Ottoman army was marching towards Bucharest and Wallachia. Now, the month of the attack was August. It was really, really hot. And imagine a forest of impaled people waiting for you, some of them still waiting, still alive to tell the story to their fellow soldiers. From the 100,000 soldiers that came to invade Wallachia, more than half turned back or deserted. The great Sultan, Mehmed, who was leading this expedition, who was also the same Sultan that conquered Constantinople, actually decided after another ambush of Vlad to turn back, and they didn't touch Wallachia for a while. So he got this nickname, Vlad Impaler, from these stories and from his very infamous character. Now, he didn't live to rule long after that because of all the politics in place. He was supposed to receive help from the Hungarian kings. That help didn't materialize, so the kings forged a letter sending it to the Pope that Vlad allied himself with the Ottomans and put them in prison. Guess where? Sometimes in the Corvin Castle. So Vlad the Impaler was not associated with Bran Castle at all. I know Dracula myths are surrounding Bran Castle, but he might have visited the Bran Castle just to ask for some fees from the merchants over there. But he was spending his time in prison in Corvin or in Budapest in Hungary. Now, he did have some feuds also with the merchants in Brasov, which is a medieval town in Transylvania. And it was complicated, as in Game of Thrones, I promise. He had a mistress from Brasov. The mistress was of Saxon origin. The Transylvanian Saxons were the merchants of this area between Wallachia and Transylvania and between Moldova. And they weren't really happy with Vlad the Impaler because he would charge them fees if they wanted to sell their produce in Wallachia, the same way they would charge fees to the Wallachian merchants if they would sell their produce to Transylvania. Fair game, but they didn't really like that, of course, because all the other rulers would let them do that. And of course, Vlad didn't just take no for an answer. He burned their villages, and he would, take their families away. So of course, it was really, really bad. But having a mistress from their own community, it didn't work. And they really disliked him also for this. This happened in the same time when the printing press was invented. I'm taking just a quick pause here to put the name of the Sultan here. Great. Ahmed the Conqueror. Okay. And the name of Vlad's mistress is Katarina. Vlad mistress. Okay. Not sure if you can find any information in English about her, but there's a boutique hotel in Brasov, very, very beautiful, where she was supposed to be living, not in a boutique hotel, but in the same location. So moving on, this was happening in the same time the printing press was invented. And because they wanted a more lenient ruler and they wanted Vlad off the throne, the Saxons actually started spreading flyers with him drinking blood in front of a forest of impaled people, with him torturing people, with him having a meal of his enemies' bones and so on. There's many prints. If you just Google them, you'll see them from 500-600 years ago. And this is what Bram Stoker later found in a library while he was doing his research for a novel, a science fiction novel, a gothic novel. He actually never visited Transylvania. Bram Stoker was an Irish novelist who wanted to score big in London, actually. So he did some good research on, he needed 3 elements in order to have a successful story. He needed location. And for this reason, because Vlad the Impaler's real castle is called Poenag, and I write it here, Poenag Fortress. It's on a peak of a castle, very hard to get there, quite small. It had military significance. It wasn't a mansion or anything like that, like Bran Castle. So that was his real castle, but it lacked the architecture and the charm that Bran Castle had. Bran Castle, which was documented earlier by some other British writers, he saw that in a library. He decided to take Bran Castle as inspiration for his novel Dracula. Next, he needed a character, and he chose no other than Vlad the Impaler. From all the stories the Saxons spread, even in Romanian folklore, there's all kinds of stories of him. And the third one were superstitions or local folk tales about, as I told you, the Halloween of Romania, where you put garlic around. Hence, even today, you keep away, you stay away from vampires with garlic. But small disclosure again, you might keep everyone away if you are doing too much garlic. So all these things got together, and Bram Stoker had one of the best-selling books in history. Think about it. Before Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and I'm sure other in the last tens of years or so, after the Bible, Bram Stoker was the best-selling book. So no wonder a lot of people associated Dracula with Transylvania, Romania, vampires, and so on. There's a lot of misconception going on in there. It's based on a real character. There's a lot of things that are accurate in that book, but of course, some of them not.
Wow.
So this was just a little crash course on Dracula and the infamous rulers in Romania. But let me know if you have any questions, anything similar, and if you're curious about other Dracula stories, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing because, again, how much myth there is about Dracula and how, what everybody seems to know and think about him. This is not at all what the real person was. So even just the whole thing of drinking blood was not at all true. This was just some propaganda that was spread about him. And that, of course, reminds me of, of all the Russian characters, who is the one that there is the most myth about? And I think of course, that this is Rasputin, Grigory Rasputin. And when I was little, where was Countess Batory from? Where was she from? Hungary. Okay. Yeah. So I knew nothing about Rasputin, but when I was little, this animated movie Anastasia came out. Was like the first time I learned about him, and he was just so scary in this movie. It's yeah. I see some people saying yes. He was so scary in this animated movie, and I was Russian, I would know more about him, but I didn't. And then as I became an adult and obviously was studying to become a tour guide, that's where I got to learn more of the truth about this person. And none of the crazy things that they say, probably none of the crazy things that they say about Rasputin were true. You know, we hear that Rasputin, well, you know, if you just know him from the movie Anastasia, then you know that he cursed the Romanov family and then just wanted, you know, wanted them to die. But none of that was true. He was just a really religious person who was invited to Russia to help the royal family. And it was believed that he had some special powers, that he could, the youngest child of the Romanovs was sick. He had hemophilia, and people at that time did not know how to cure hemophilia yet. And it's believed that Rasputin had some special powers, that he could lay hands on him and ease the pain and stop the bleeding. But really few people knew why Rasputin was really there, because the big disease of the boy was a secret. And people started building theories about, like, you know, why, you know, why is this man there? So they said, well, maybe he hypnotizes the royal family. So he is this dark villain who hypnotizes the royal family and controls their minds. Okay. And then all these aristocratic families in early 20th century Russia thought of ways to, you know, how do we make him even less popular? And one thing about Rasputin, he was a simple man from a Siberian village. He liked to have fun. He liked to go out and drink. And he, you know, women flirted with him. He flirted back. He was just this, you know, he liked to have fun. He had the joie de vivre, you know. And so they started like exaggerating all of his stories, saying, yeah, that he is drunk, you know, he has orgies, and all of that stuff. And then, you know, in the Anastasia movie, Rasputin lives underground. He lives underwater. And that is kind of connected with the truth, but not entirely, is when they tried to kill him. That is partially true. He's probably just, it's a combination of him being a really strong, big man and just some little inconsistencies, and the people who tried to murder him being not very skilled. But yeah, they tried to poison him. It didn't work. Then they shot him. It didn't work right away. He tried to escape. Then they shot him some more. And then they threw his body in the river. And there is a legend that maybe he only died while his body was in the river, because when they found the body, his lungs were still filled with water. So there are these stories that, you know, he was, you know, still alive when he was underwater. And I think that's where the whole thing of Rasputin, Rasputin living underwater comes from. And there are lots of other great movies about him too, but this is the one I think was like the most myths about him. And I saw that there is a question in the chat, movies about Dracula. Is there something that you can recommend?
Yeah, I just mentioned the classic one, in my opinion, is the one with Keanu Reeves and Anthony Hopkins. And there's some others, but that's the most accurate one in terms of the book. If you're looking for an accurate one for Vlad the Impaler himself, unfortunately, Hollywood was not as interested. We have one, of course, made in communism, also a little bit propagandistic, kind of nationalistic and so on. It's only in Romanian. You can probably find it, and it's very intuitively titled Vlad the Impaler. But the other ones are blockbusters, TV series, cartoons. There's another one, I think Dracula Reloaded or something a few years ago, which has great visuals, but couldn't be further from the truth when he like transforms on the battlefield and so on. But yeah, the classic one is really good. It's really good as the book, and the actors are great. And even if it's a little bit older, it's really, really nice. And I agree that every myth or legend or superstition comes from a grain of truth. It has to come. So there's something related to the water with Rasputin, something related to Vlad the Impaler's ruthlessness. Of course, he was not a saint. One more reason for why people are believing him is, still alive or hunting people, turning into a bat, is that they never found his body. He was killed. I didn't mention this, but he was killed later. Nobody knows how he got killed. If he was poisoned, if he died on the battlefield, if someone betrayed him. One thing we know for sure is that his head was severed off his body and sent to Istanbul to the Sultan Mehmed as proof that he is dead, because otherwise the Sultan said, I'm not coming to Wallachia anymore. So he was sent in a jar of honey to preserve the head to the Sultan. For this, we have written documents. But for the rest, we don't know. They said he was buried in the monastery of Snagov, near Bucharest, and they have made for marketing purposes a coffin there and all this and all that. However, actually at the beginning of the 20th century, a team of archaeologists went there to dig for his grave, and they found some bones, but then with the X-ray and all the more modern technologies, they came to the conclusion it was not Vlad Impaler. So to this day, we don't know where he is, if he's still roaming the streets. Some Romanians are asking him to come back and deal with our politicians, but this is an entirely different story.
Oh my gosh, Vlad, I have to say, it's been just so amazing listening to your stories. And, I think everybody, at least who I invited, know that your company, Romanian Thrills, you guys provide virtual tours, and no wonder, I have no doubt that they are just awesome because you're such a great storyteller. And I heard, so your company was featured by The Guardian, isn't that right?
Yeah, we got in a few features on the past year or so. First, because we showed places of Romania in our physical tours last year, just before the pandemic, that even Romanians didn't know of. So a lot of Romanians came in and asked, hey, is this in Romania? Is this our country? We had no idea we can do this and that and this in Romania. So you can follow our page, Facebook, Instagram, our website as well, romanianthrills.us, and get in touch with us. We have all the details in there. We're happy to help. No strings attached. We're just happy to help, as Olga is with Russia. We're just happy to see when people put our home countries on their bucket list for traveling. And The Guardian did a feature article for our virtual tours. We actually were mentioned in a few other publications, but this was really nice because it was like top 10 virtual tours of this coming year. And our tour is of Brasov. So the town, which now is a city, where is next to Bran Castle, is where Vlad Impaler, Dracula, actually had a feud with the Transylvanian Saxons and had his mistress over there. So we basically go around, and the way our virtual tours are different, they are pre-recorded while we guide you through there. And at certain points, you have a decision to make. You have an intersection. You need to say, okay, Vlad, take me to the left, Vlad, take me to the right. You just click, and I'll take you to a different route. So it's kind of you're guiding me in the virtual tour. And we have a special deal for today with Olga. So we'll first of all, we'll give one free tour of Brasov to someone from the audience, and let Olga tell what she has to do about it as well.
Yes. So after this is over, you have a chance to enter our giveaway where Vlad is giving away one of his amazing virtual tours where you get to choose where he takes you. It just sounds so amazing, and walk the same streets as Vlad the Impaler. And you can join also any of my virtual tours. I have a variety, about 6 different ones. So in order to enter the giveaway, when this live is over, go into our account Eagle Travel and comment anything under the last post in my comment, in my account. So you can share with us in the comments how much you enjoyed this Instalive, or maybe you can share with us if you have any questions to Vlad or to me. I know that I saw lots of questions about just like, how do I find pictures of these amazing places and who were all these people? I myself was just so fascinated with them. So please feel free to ask questions or just share with us your impressions. So just comment under the last post in Eagle Travel account, and then I will select a winner of one of my tours. I'll ask Vlad to look at the comments and select the winner. So you have 15 minutes after it's over. You will have 15 minutes to do that. So you have to comment within 15 minutes, and then in 15 minutes, we will pick. And then we also do have a special deal. So even if you don't get picked, you still get to have a special deal. Vlad, can you tell us how much do you normally charge for your virtual tour?
So we normally charge $20 for it, and for today we decided to do a bundle for the same price because Olga charges a similar price point. So you can just get a virtual tour of Brasov and one of Olga's tours, which you can choose from, for just $20. Mm-hmm. And the payment can be done on either my website or her website, and then we'll put both of the tours together and they'll be sent directly to you.
Exactly.
And if you did like it as well, you can go on Romanian Thrills Instagram as well and just post it on your story, so I can also see that you enrolled on the giveaway.
Totally.
And we'll be happy to share these with you.
Yes, please follow Vlad. He is tagged in the latest post, and he will be commenting too. You know, I'm sure you'll have questions for him, so he will be there to answer. But if you want to just find his account, it's Romanian Thrills on Instagram. Please follow him. Everything they do is amazing. If you are interested in using our special deal, you can either write directly to Vlad or write directly to me, and we will coordinate. Similarly, please feel free to follow Eagle Travel. We share lots of stories about Russia, interview lots of amazing people, wonderful guides from all over the world. And Vlad, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure. What a great treat on a Sunday afternoon, Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely. It was really my pleasure as well. And I can't recommend Olga enough as well, because I am subscribed to her newsletter as well. And it's crazy how many new things I get to learn as well. And I'm a tour guide. And I'm a tour guide from a, let's say, Slavic/Latin country. So a lot of the things are very similar, but I'm learning a lot. So thanks for that. And yeah,
awesome.
I was really happy to be part of this. We'll keep in touch.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, remember, comment under the last post to get some freebies. Okay, and thank you for joining us today. Have an amazing weekend. And bye. Bye, everybody.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.